Well, good morning to you, Australia. Good evening to you, North America. It's that time again. Is dog Max behind me? He's on the show, sort of. He's not really the main reason we're here, but he kind of pops in the screen there as we open the show. But Max right behind me. Paul Morgan's coming up next. We're out of dry dock, everybody. That's right. Talking Baseball Australia is back. Time for the Open. Great show for you as we preview and basically say, welcome back to baseball. We'll do that next right here on Talking Baseball Australia.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
No, it'd help. It'd help if I had the mic up. Hello, everybody. As a moment ago, I just showed you guys my dog, Max, here in Texas. He's not a dog, folks. He's an all-American. He's all Australian, all Canadian. He's all everything. He's all legend. It's my broadcast partner in crime, and Paul Morgan will join us here as I'm going to bring him up right now, and I bring this down to a little producing on the fly here in 3, 2, 1, and welcoming from Perth. Hello. Most everybody didn't hear my open. I was all excited and juiced, ready to go, but I looked behind me at the last moment, and there was the dog in the shot. He's now down, but the mic is up now. You guys are hearing me. Apologize for the back. You know what, though? We're coming out of dry dock, so I guess, partner, it's kind of fitting that Vaughn does a little stumble out of the gates. Hey, mate, how are you? And dust us all off. Ready to go?
I'm not. I heard everything before. I actually. It's interesting because I can read subtitles of our Talking Baseball video on Facebook, but I can't actually hear you. So we've got a little technical snafu straight away off the bat.
Well, it was just it's one of those deals where I've been doing this solo, the last couple, months with the T-Bones, and one of the things I got to remember, I've actually pulled the curtain back for folks watching. I got this new audio interface, but I got to remember to turn it up and down, and I had everything ready to go, and when I looked behind me, the dog, I went, wait, I'm looking at my screen, there's the dog behind me because he's waiting. He's actually on the day bed here looking out the office window because mom and daughter are out doing something, and he's waiting for them to return. So the best view of the car park is he's there. I'm going, wait, what's the dog doing in the shot there? And so then I didn't turn the mic up, so my bad. But hey, and that's the worst thing that happens today. That I guess we're doing okay. Good to see you. He is in Perth. I am here in Texas, and we are saying hello. Welcome back. Good day to Major League Baseball. Its return is, well, it's beginning in earnest in not just here, but all over North America. But baseball's back. I'm going to give you a chance to start us off, partner. Your knee jerk when you saw the news last week that MLB was coming back. What was your knee jerk reaction? What was your? I lost him there. Let's bring him back here in just a moment. He'll be back in a moment. But again, a lot on the show today. There's a lot to dissect here. We've got a lot of things to jump into. Paul's going to get back on just a moment, so just bear with me there. But again, the show's Talking Baseball Australia. My name's Dan Vaughn, and my broadcast partner with the Heat and the Australian Baseball League, Paul Morgan, is in Perth. Again, he'll be joining us just a moment. Good to see Jess Williams out there. A question being asked. There he goes. He's back. He's back, folks. We are in vintage form. Apparently, we're in vintage spring training form. Are we? It's summer training. We're in summer training form. Michael, are you there? Can you read me? Are you there, bud?
That'll go on the reel. It was actually quite bizarre because I was watching the Facebook video and I was like, oh, wow, cool. It has subtitles on it. I've never, because it's on mute on my computer next to me, and I was like, oh, it's got subtitles. I mean, the subtitles aren't necessarily accurate, but it had subtitles on it. Then the video starts and completely no audio. I couldn't hear a word you're saying, and I've watched enough press conferences lately to kind of pick it, but Oh boy. Well, that must mean
Okay,
one thing, Dad.
yeah,
We're back.
yeah. Well, let me start with what I was asking a moment ago. When you saw, and I'm just going to give you a knee-jerk reaction because I'll give you mine too. When you saw Major League Baseball's coming back, what was your first knee-jerk, your first thought coming to your head?
Look, I truly think it needed to come back because I think like there's just so much going on globally, and even though sport isn't necessarily the answer, I think it's just something that bounds your communities together. Look, I was really disappointed in the way that the Players Association and the players and the owners, should I say, dragged it out for so long because I felt like there's enough going on in the world, particularly in the States. There's enough going on, and just I felt like baseball could have just been that sport that might have just sort of given a bit of hope where to be frank, I mean globally virtually all hope was lost there for a minute. Like the wheels were totally off the so to hear when it came back, I was annoyed and I was a little bitter that announcement hadn't come together in a more natural way. To me, it sort of seemed a little bit like as a parent, you have your two kids fighting, and you kind of think they're going to sort it out together, so you let them kind of sort it out together. Turns out they can't sort it out together, so you have to jump in. So mixed emotions. I'm really happy baseball's back, but at the same time, boy, what a mess.
Yeah, what a mess. We got a lot to talk about. First off, you guys can join us. The chat line's open. I'll have the chat up for you on the screen in a moment. Good to see Jess Williams out there. My wife, who's out doing whatever she's doing here in Texas, asking about Emerald sod poodles. Why are they playing? I believe, just real quickly, Jim, to answer your question, I believe that's a collegiate wooden bat thing, but don't quote me on that. I'll have to look into that, but we're doing this thing. We're talking baseball from Australian slant here. My question for you, the fans, first off, is will you guys watch? Are you going to watch Major League Baseball? It's going to be on, and if you're in North America, chances of actually seeing a game, not real good, unless you're maybe in Chicago or Texas, perhaps. But chances of seeing a game in person, not so good. But chances of watching a game on TV, pretty much with that, golf and NASCAR, that's your TV options right now.
Yeah.
So that's my question. Will you watch MLB? I know you'll watch MLB. I know I'll watch MLB.
Yes.
And that was my first. That was my knee jerk. My knee jerk was something to watch on TV because I gotta tell you, mate, I can only watch so many game fives of 2015 and 1976 and game 7. I know what happens already. So that was my knee jerk. But on the show as well, we're going to really dive into this Major League Baseball plan and try to break it down for you guys and explain to you exactly what's going on and overall. But again, that's our overall thoughts. Are you happy? I mean, are you overall, are you happy?
Look, I actually think the season could be a lot of fun because I mean, I was listening to something the other day, which is true. Even a really average, even a terrible team in baseball can get hot for 40 games. Now, there's only a 60-game season, so all of a sudden you sort of want to. You kind of go. There's no team that's really out of it because I mean anyone can. So it's more interesting probably than ever before. Look, I like a couple of the rule changes as well. I think it's going to be actually a really interesting show.
Yeah, well, let's jump into those rule changes. Let's jump right into that because Major League Baseball, and let me pull those up for you. I've got a lot of, here's your fast facts here. I'm going to actually put this on the screen, and I'm going to actually pull us off the screen. You'll be able to hear us, but here's your fast facts right here on the screen. And basically, I'll read them to you guys, and I'll pull the best mate down real quickly here. But number of games, 60. Opening day around July 24th. It's later on this month. Of course, happy July 2nd in Australia, July 1st in North America. Last day of the season, September 27th. Spring training began. Some teams began their summer training, spring training 2.0 today in the States. Friday in some places. They're doing some testing today and tomorrow, and all teams will be rolling on Friday. Postseason ends November 1st. So in case there's a second wave of this COVID deal, they'll be done before right by Halloween here. A number of playoff teams, 10. And here's the big sticking point, the bottom bullet point there, salary structure, a full pro rata, which is 60 games, means that players earn around 37% of their full season salary as long as the season is, this 60-game season is completed. So there's your first look, partner, right there. As I bring us back on the screen there. Again, not a lot of. I mean, that's the basics right there. Obviously, 60 games, and I think the first thing that comes to mind, and we're going to talk a bit about that, but it's almost an ABL season with an extra 20 games, really.
It is, and we all know firsthand that like every game means a bit more. You can't go on a losing streak. You go on a losing streak, you're in a bit of trouble. What's interesting, I think, the way that the schedule's made up so much is it clearly like there are some teams. I'm thinking like that. One of the teams I really like this season, the Minnesota Twins. I mean, that Central Division's not great. Playing majority of their division rivals should see them have a very smooth run into the postseason. A couple of teams in tougher divisions. It'll be interesting. So to break down the 40 games, so you play the 4 divisional opponents 10 times, and then the 20 remaining games you'll play in interleague games. So in your geographic area. So I don't think that's been digested yet, but that'll be how that'll look. The COVID DL as well as a separate DL, and then but I don't mind it. And the one ABL thing that's ticking the box, DV, is in those extra innings, you get a slightly different version from what I understand, but a runner starts at second base, no one on first, but the runner starts in second base in extra innings. So it's almost the ABL, folks.
Yeah, and here are those extra rules on the screen for me. Put those up for you. I'll read those off to you, though. The extra rules, universal DH, so both National and American League both will have the designated hitter this year, and that's for sure in the books. 3 innings minimum unless, and this is for relievers, mind you, relief pitchers, 3 innings minimum unless there is an inning, you're finishing the inning. If you're the final, the final batter of an inning, you can, or final batter at the inning, maybe double play ball, whatever. 67 pages of protocol. We're going to get to that in a moment. Official scores, and this is something that it's not been reported, but I can tell you with very, not very degrees, 100% certainty that several clubs, one being the Minnesota Twins, I can tell you that for sure, will be using official scores remotely. Many on game day personnel, including broadcast, will be remote. So broadcast remote, official scores remote. They're trying to cut down as much of the interaction as possible. But that's something that's not been reported, but you're hearing it here first. I know the Twins are doing this. I understand the Tigers are doing this, the White Sox, that whole division. But official scores, for the most part, are doing their job from at home. They're not actually in the ballpark.
Right.
And the Twins have not announced that, but I got that on very 100% reliable authority from straight, and also the Royals as well. I actually got that from both. But some not reported, but it's not something you talk about, the official scores, but we talk about the official scores in the ABL quite often. And can you imagine official scoring? We talk about broadcasting remotely. Broadcasters will be remote, radio guys remote, official scores remote. That is a challenge for sure for the bunch of those extra folks having to do things from a distance. We've done it before. It's not easy.
We have, and it's actually interesting. And right now, because in the Australian rules football over here, you can't, no broadcasters are out in the stadiums either. But so, in my office at the radio, in my office behind me, there's a little bunk set up that has the football broadcast in there. So all the broadcasters go in there instead of going to the stadium. So it's look, but the scorers one's really interesting, DV, isn't it? Because that's you feel like that's something you kind of want you want your scorers at the stadium, but
yeah, I think of that too a lot, like from our standpoint. I mean, I forget who said this. The college, and I don't remember the name of the gentleman because I've only heard his name once, but he does the college color commentary for the ESPN games of the College World Series, which was canceled this year in Omaha, Nebraska, the NCAA top level of collegiate baseball. But he mentioned this, and I've tried to explain how it is as a broadcaster because, you're up there. If you're watching the game itself, the balls and strikes, that's pretty easy. The ground ball to short, that's pretty easy. What you miss out on is the auxiliary things. And I've always said the smells of the game, that's one thing you miss out on. The rhythm, the vibration of the music, or the fans tapping the stands or the clapping of the hands. You hear it online, but you don't actually feel it. Your body feels we get a loud crowd at Perth Holly Davidson. You feel the crowd in your
Oh
bones. You
yeah,
feel it. You're not feeling that, and that's one of the things. You don't feel the smells or smell the smells, feel the sound. And the extra thing is, you don't see the auxiliary things. Like, I don't care how many cameras you have. There's certain things that we know. Simon, for example, and Kim McGee, both Simon Isis and Kim McGee, they pick up great things as color commentators by looking in the dugout or looking in the bullpen.
yeah.
And you can't see that online. And that makes for a tough broadcast call.
100%, and I think it's all the little things as well. And talking to some people currently who are broadcasting other sports remotely, what they and no different to baseball. If like is the infield drawn in? Well, if you don't have the camera shot, you don't know. Is the shift on? If you don't have the camera shot, you don't know. If
Right.
the right fielder could have fallen asleep, and you don't know. I mean, it's all those things that so it makes it particularly, and I think it makes it tougher on radio than it does on TV, because TV is still obviously calling to the shots. But I think
Yep.
in radio, and you know as well, DV, half the time, I mean, baseball's not the fastest game in the world. So a lot of time you'll spin a story, or you might see, a kiddo with a packet of chips or something that might remind you of something or something. So you sort of, it's a little bit more difficult for the radio guys. One thing, and I don't know if they're doing it in Major League Baseball, they've done in sports here is the augmented fan sound that's coming through as well. So it's a bizarre thing. It's getting a bit mixed reviews, but look, I think there's some people who love just to hear, love to hear just the sport and nothing else, and they think it's a bit of an unusual circumstances. So why not play it naturally? Other people love it, but it'll be interesting to see if baseball, will they do the stretch still? Will they do it? Will they have? I know over here in the football, they've had fans dial in through Zoom, and they've sent out the piece to cameras of people on Zoom. So I don't know. They're going to do the seventh inning stretch via Zoom. I don't know. So
Yeah, it's craziness there. My name's Dan Vaughn, Paul Morgan. We're talking Baseball Australia. We are back live. We're on a dry dock. It's our first show in a long time because, quite frankly, ain't been nothing to talk about. There's been no minor leagues. We're going to get to that in a moment, the minor leagues in a moment. We're going to get to some of that and maybe try to spin some positive news there. A couple things to roster rules. Let me get this for you guys and pull this up. Let me read these to you, roster rules. These are the special roster rules that you may or may not know about. Let me pull those up for you. But opening day, now here, this is interesting. Opening day, 30 active from a 60-man player pool, trimmed to 28 players. I'm going to pull the mute down for a moment here. So I'm getting a little feedback. Just give me just a moment there. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm going to bring Paul back in just a moment. But opening day, 30 active from a 60-man player pool, trimmed to 28 players on the 15th day of the season. So 2 weeks in, the first 2 weeks, you can have a 30-man active roster up from 22. And then you've got your 26 on the or 28th, the 15th day. Then they cut it to 26 players on the 29th day of the season. So month one, you're down to 26. And then you can always carry 3 players from your taxi squad on road trips, with one being a catcher. And the trade deadline, August 31st. So basically just over a month of baseball to your trade deadline. In September 15th is the postseason eligibility date. That's not far off, really, from what we normally have there. But and I'm going to bring Paul back on here there. And the special, oops, sorry about that. I don't know where I went. There we go. Sorry about that. There we go. Sorry about that. I don't know where the button froze on me there. But the postseason eligibility rule, I don't know if you guys heard this, brought Paul back up there, but the postseason eligibility rule, it's only about a week off. That's not too much. I mean, it's usually that's 2 weeks off. Usually it's October 1 because they usually play right now October 15th or so. It's a little, not that far off, but the trade deadline, you're basically getting a little over a month of baseball, then boom, you got to make a move. That could create an very interesting situation as far as the mad scramble to, let's just say you get off to a terrible start, but you're thinking, okay, I've got to do something to kind of salvage this thing. Do you panic buy? Do you panic sell? What happens there? That creates an interesting dilemma with the trade deadline being only just over, it's about 5 weeks until they trade deadline until the season starts.
What do you think will happen this year, DV, when it comes to? Do you think teams will be as aggressive and active on the trade market as normal? Do you think it'll be more, or do you think from a team's perspective, do you think it's more like, well, it's 60 game, got who we've got, maybe if we can snafu someone, great, but we're not really putting in as much effort as we normally would. I mean, that's kind of the vibe I'm feeling might be happening.
Yeah, well, it's such a sprint this year. I mean, the one thing I love about the Major League game, which is different than any other. I mean, really, the minor league game, the MiLB is 142 games. Independent ball is about 100. Short season about 80. The ABL winter ball 40. But you're looking at 60 games. That is still a sprint. I mean, that's a 400-meter sprint's what that is. And I think there's two ways to look at it, because the impending doom of 2021 still looms. What I mean by that, and we're kind of touching that in a moment, this whole thing that they got worked out took weeks and weeks and weeks, is under the same umbrella and the same guise of, oh, by the way, the collective bargaining agreement expires next year, and we got to get something done for 2021 and beyond. And I think that's going to be part of the issue. I think you have a lot of players who are going to really discourage being traded, especially with that hanging over their heads. I think there's a lot of mystery about what's going to happen going forward. I think that has a little bit to do with it. But I think it'll be interesting to see what clubs do. I mean, if you got lightning in a bottle, let's just say you're Seattle. That's a good example. You've had some success in the past, but you've never been to the World Series. And let's just say Seattle gets off to a phenomenal start and basically solidifies themselves as a top 10 team. And they know by August that, barring a major collapse, we just play 500 ball, we should be fine and make the postseason. And maybe a chance to win, yes, an asterisk beside it. But don't you think the fans in Seattle would be thrilled to win a World Series, regardless at 60 games or 600 games? I think a team like that would go all in and say, you know what? This is our chance for lightning in a bottle. And I think you're going to have some situations. It may be overall, partner, it's going to be probably a different year trade deadline wise, but I think in certain situations, certain cases, certain teams, they may go all in because it's their lightning in a bottle chance. The game is different this year. And you have guys playing for contracts, and the league playing for, and the owners and the players are playing for a new agreement. And I think there's a lot at stake. And I think that overall, the big picture is probably not, but the small picture is, in certain cases, I could see this thing being a crazy August 31st.
Have you had that moment yet, DV, when you sort of you look now, you can actually look towards the 2020 season, and you sort of, I don't know, I mean, outside of the Astros, the Asterix tour, which kind of is, I mean, they've been probably the big winner of all of this. But you sort of stop and think for a minute, oh, yeah, that's right, David Ross manages the Cubs now. Oh, that's right, Madden's over at the Angels. Joe Girardi's at Philly now. And Dusty Baker's back at the, I mean, there's so many things that
it happens every day. It happened to me today. I was just doing a little just prepping for the show, and I'm like, oh, Madden's in Anaheim. I forgot about that. And that's a great example. There's a lot of that going on, and I have to go back and reread. I mean, so much has gone on in other things, COVID and the whole, just all that, and so much of our distraction has been away from sport that player moves seem like years ago. I mean, it seems like the player moves were 10 years ago, and I'd forgotten. I mean, honestly, I didn't really realize it till today that the Texas Rangers got a pretty good pitching rotation, all things considered. Well, I kind of forgot about that. I'd forgotten. Oh, wait, they made this move. They got Lance Lynn. I'm like, wait, they might be okay. I'm thinking, and I had to go back and think, well, who's playing for them again? I mean, it's really reintroduced the game to me.
It's hilarious because I actually had that same moment today. I was like, when did Corey Kluber go to the Texas Rangers? I don't recall that.
I'd forgotten. That was so long ago. That was a whole pandemic ago. And that's speaking of pandemic. Let me roll these protocols for you real quickly here on the screen and get these to you guys. This is the protocols, and this is the highlights of the protocols. This is the highlights, and if you want to call it highlights, then I'm going to bring Paul down real quickly. There's volume here. Just a moment here. I'm bringing it down just a second, partner. But here's the protocols, the highlights of the protocols. And we're going to dive into this a little bit. But players and other team personnel not participating in the game sit in the stands, separated by at least 6 feet. They would apply the same social distancing standards standing during the national anthem, so they'll be spread out, no shoulder to shoulder. Celebratory contact is forbidden. No high fives, fist bumps, or hugs. Soccer players would be in trouble, wouldn't they? And then no spitting, chewing tobacco, sunflower seeds of any kind. You can't spit anything. So no bubble gum, no seeds. no tobacco, no spitting, which that may be the toughest thing these guys are going to do the whole time. The guys spit. I mean, they're going to be minimal distance between base runners, fielders, coaches, umpires, and field on the field will be encouraged as much as possible. So there'll be some social distancing on the base. Base coach and the umpire will be enough apart. Umpire and first baseman enough apart, which makes arguments very interesting, doesn't it? A ball thrown out once has been touched by multiple players will be tossed away. So if a couple players touch a ball, it's gone. Post-game showers are discouraged. It'll be a lot like my junior high PE class. And they've also been using taxis. Also, discourage the use of taxis and ride shares. They want to put them all on one team bus. And players will be screened for temperatures, which actually started today, multiple times per day, testing for the virus multiple times a week. Anyone testing positive immediately is quarantined. 2 negative tests require 2 negative tests required for a possible return is the wording right there. And those items sound pretty, I guess, well, first off, that's just part of the whole thing. It's just a 67-page manuscript, if you want to call it, the Major League Baseball, and it's online. You can see it online. There's an MLB manuscript about this whole thing. While that all sounds, pretty easy, just those little guidelines, there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just what meets the eye. 67 pages. Are you confident, Paul Morgan, as we sit here right now, July 2nd, that you're not going to have any fist bumps, hugs, high fives, spitting, arguing with the umpire? Is all that going to fly?
Well, it's so interesting because, I mean, the only game that I'm watching heavily at the moment is Australian rules football, which is going on down here. The guys spend the game tackling each other, but no high fives are allowed. End of the game, not allowed to put your arms around each other. I mean, look, if you hit the biggest dinger of your life, and then you come in the dugout and just like, good shot.
Yeah. It's like one of the things I love about the footy, and I watch the AFL as well, is that these teams will do their post-game songs in their clubhouse or the locker room, and they're singing their songs, and they're all hugging, and usually beers flowing or Gatorade's flowing, all that. And there's none of that. It's like in the NASCAR drive. The NASCAR races, they win a race, they shower themselves with Cokes or whatever their sponsor is. None of that. They're just kind of they're in a distance with a microphone like this, and it's like, it's so anti-climate. Hey, dude, you just won $1 million, and he's like,
I can imagine, I can imagine if someone hits a walk-off as they round third to head home, all the teammates have to be like a wedding, and they'll run through the little wedding procession, like, we know nothing, no. And the ball's being played by essentially, I guess, a ground ball. That ball's done. I mean, once it goes to the shortstop, the second, the first, that's multiple players. That ball's in the incinerator, I guess. So
it'd be a great year to be a fan, but again, there won't be that many fans. Although we did see today, you and I talked about this before we came on the air. That is part of this whole equation too. 2 weeks ago, I would have told you that the Texas Rangers and Houston Astros and probably the Marlins and probably Tampa and probably Arizona would all have a third of their crowd, maybe a half, whatever. Now the COVID has really picked up here in all 3 of those places. That's kind of up in the air right now. But Chicago is saying that 25% capacity. That gives you lots of room in Wrigley Field to enjoy yourself, spread out.
Yeah, well, that's great news. And look, I feel terrible for particularly the Rangers with that new ballpark. I mean, they got a new ballpark that they can't get anyone to, which is unfortunate for the fans. Look, I think you'll find that as the season rolls on, that capacity might change a little bit. I think you'll start to see restrictions ease a little bit. I mean, the alarming part is, the numbers are still going north rapidly in parts of the US. But it's look, it'd be nice to get some fans back at least, the diehards. But look, there'll be a lot of people who won't want to go back either. But then I think the hard part in watching from afar, it seems that clearly if you're going to go to a ballpark in the US, you're probably going to have to wear a mask. Now, I'm not au fait with what's going on politically in the US, but it seems that there seems to be a great divide of people who are wearing masks, who are common sense people, and people who are not. It's because they feel like their rights are being taken away from them. So look, everyone's going to have to put politics aside, and if you want to go to a ball game, this is what you have to do. And if you don't comply, thanks for playing. See you later, folks. But it's just getting everyone back on. It's getting that the political side of it as well is going to be the real challenge.
Yeah, I will say this. I'll give you, it's very rarely I can tie a funeral service or memorial service into some good news, but I'm going to give it to you. Today, my wife and I went to a memorial service over here for a high school mate of ours' father. He passed back in April, but finally we're able to do a legitimate service. And it was a memorial service. They had a private thing with the family, but actually a public deal with their friends and mates and all that. And what I found interesting today was, and I was really not sold in the whole baseball thing, public meetings, church gathering, whatever, concerts, whatever you want to call it. We went to a church here that has kind of like arena type seating. And actually, if you close your eyes and didn't know any better, it's almost like a basketball arena type seating. It's got the seat, the cushion seats, and it's set up like that. Well, they had gone in and blocked off. Every other row was blocked off. We were sitting with my in-laws, was my wife and I, my mother and father-in-law. Then they were in the aisle. We were 4 seats in. Then to my left, no one. And then in front of us, nobody. The next person in front of us was 2 rows up. The next person behind us was 2 rows up. And I got to tell you, I was a little apprehensive going in today. We had our mask on. But looking around, I remember telling my wife, this wouldn't be terrible for baseball, or this wouldn't be terrible for because even though we were there was a group of people in there, maybe 100. I didn't feel like I had people on top of me. I think it can be done. I think a lot of people poo-poo this idea of, hey, how can you have fans? But I think now I've come around that it can be done. Is it that easy? Is this easy as separating people? Can we not trust folks to stay social distance during a ball game? Are there going to be too many people having too many, chasing the beer man, so to speak?
Well, yeah, and that's it. It all comes back down to the general public, and that's why you're seeing that's why you're seeing places like Australia doing okay, places like Melbourne a disaster now in Australia,
Right.
Because there were people who broke protocol. I mean, it's not an overly complicated thing to do. Stay 1.5 meters, 6 feet away from people, and it's not overly difficult, but a lot of people are making it difficult.
Yeah, they are, no doubt about it. Well, there's your protocols. But we're good to see Bowser out there and Jess Williams. Others, you guys feel free to chat questions and comments as well. We're going to be having, of course, the show's Talking Baseball Australia Live. We're going to be having this weekly event as we get closer to baseball and get closer to the season. My name's Dan Vaughn, Paul Morgan there. We are the we like to consider ourselves some knowledge of baseball in Australia, but this is a show that, while we do talk Major League, it's from an Australian perspective. We're going to get to that a little bit in a moment, but I want to really cover some of this stuff because there's 2 things that I look at, the protocols and then the players opting out. That's going to happen, and that's one thing they've talked about, that they're going to allow these players that don't. We've already seen some now. They're not all health-related, but most of them are health-related, and you're going to see more opting out. And I got no problem with that. Hey, it's just like you just said. You wear a mask, if you don't feel safe, don't go out. It's kind of the same thing. If you're compromised, I guess you're not playing. And I had no problem with that.
No, absolutely. I mean, I work with people. I know people who still here, even though COVID's relatively under control. I mean, there are people whose children have, autoimmune diseases, or their mothers or father or whoever is in the group that's quite susceptible to COVID, and they're still working from home. They're still isolating as much as possible, food deliveries, this kind of thing. Looking for the Ryan Zimmerman, Ian Desmond, Joe Ross, Mike Leake, these guys, like, what value is money if it causes pain into your into your family? And I mean, it's such a. I think anyone who has an issue with players not playing, like, really need to go and get their head read, because it's just like, it's a personal choice, and that's it. If you're comfortable playing, then great. If you're not comfortable playing, that shouldn't affect that shouldn't affect anything going forward. It shouldn't affect your contract negotiations, your arbitration, anything along those lines. It's just these people love playing baseball. They just feel like they love their family a lot more than baseball, as they should, and that's sort of where we're at. But it's look, no. I'm sure as it gets closer and the realization, I mean, I read today, I think, I think it was Charlie Blackmon from the Rockies may have got COVID. And there's a lot of people
Yep.
know that the Blue Jays organization got COVID and others that I think as you get closer, you'll have more players pull out. But it's look, the guys, and there might be a lot of guys who make millions of dollars that might just go, well,
Yeah.
is it worth it? I've got a lot of money. Like, well, what am I doing this for?
Right.
And that's
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I mean, it's at what point does it become not worth it? I mean, you've got in most industries now they're letting people opt to not unless you're in a obviously if you're a cook or a food delivery is one thing, but if you're whatever, if you're opting out to stay home, it's the same thing no matter where you're at. I think that's kind of the way it is. The MiLB, if I can say it for you, situation is a different story altogether, but it's related. While all this has been going on, baseball has been halted in the affiliated baseball ranks. That situation, though, is dire. And I don't know how if and so much about a lot of friends of mine who are working in MiLB, a lot of players. I see, a couple of guys watching now who would have been that route before. A lot of young Australian players have been caught in the crosshairs or have been caught in this mess as well, this MiLB. And it's a mess. In case you missed it yesterday over in the States, they announced that the Major League Baseball, along with the MiLB, had announced that there'll be no minor league baseball as we know it this year. That's on the heels of probably having no minor league baseball as we've seen it in recent years next year, because there's a lot of changes in store. That's a big mess. It's a secondary issue lingering, but it's an issue that with Major League Baseball coming back, the minors go away. Your thoughts on that? Because that to me is where it really hurts a lot of young Australian players not getting a chance to play ball this year.
I'll ask a question with a question. Do you feel with minor league, like we all kind of knew that minor league baseball wasn't going to happen, but do you feel in a way that we know that there was going to be a reduction of teams anyway in minor league baseball? Do you feel that they really kind of are using, has COVID been something for baseball owners that they kind of go, all right, well, we're never going to get this thing minor league baseball off the ground. And then you know what? Well, we're just going to have to trim the herd dramatically next season, and we're going to use it, is part of this whole, like, I don't think minor league baseball is ever going to happen. But secondly, has this been an inconvenient convenience for baseball owners to kind of go, well, here we go. Here's a way we can radically cut. And I don't think the minor league baseball model will be ever even remotely the same as what it was last year. Your thoughts, Stevie, whether this is just something that, there was probably more of a hope it never happened?
Last November, October, November-ish, Baseball America reported that there had been a big rumor going around, a meeting behind closed doors that Major League Baseball wanted to eliminate 40 minor league teams, drop it down to 120 from 160. That included getting rid of all short season rookie type level clubs, with the exception of the complex clubs in the spring training sites. They weren't happy with the facilities at some places. The travel arrangements, some of the leagues were spread out. There are a couple of them that have some long trips in them. In general, also a lot of players, just a lot of minor league players just sitting around. Anybody that's been to spring training has seen this in spring training. If you go to spring training, and I've seen this a lot with minor league players from Australia, I've been to Lakeland and had a chance to visit with Ulrich Bajowski was a rookie, and he was kind of in the complex but not playing for a team. They were all on the back fields just playing amongst themselves because they had too many players on enough teams. Those factors all went into it. In October, November, a lot of folks in the States freaked out. I mean, I was one of them. Minor league baseball cannot go away as it is. There's just no way. But I think, and one thing that happened, you had the legislature, both houses, both houses of the assemblies were Congress and the Senate were both House Representatives. I'm trying to explain my U.S. government to you guys. I don't want to bore you all with it, but you get the point. the congressional folks were getting all in a huff because, oh my gosh, we're going to take away Major League Baseball's antitrust exemption if you take away our minor league baseball teams from Chattanooga and from Quad Cities and from these places like that. And then here comes COVID. And I think what you're right on about, because now here in the States, the people folks in Congress, they got other things to worry about. You've got an election coming up for starters. You've got a pandemic going on. You got folks out of jobs. You've got stimulus packages and financial help. Right now, what the minor league baseball landscape is in 2021 is the least of their concerns. So I think the owners have taken this, and it's going to happen. You're going to see contraction next year. You're going to see 40 less teams. You're going to see it. I think in the long haul, it could be a good thing for baseball, and I'll get to that in a moment. But to answer your question, with your question with a question, fence beyond a fence there, to pull back the curtain of the old days. But yes, I mean, it's a great chance. And it's like we talked about before, and I know the ABL feels this way. I know the ABL brass feels this way. If there ever was a chance to try something different outside the box, this is the chance. I think Major League Baseball is doing that. There was a chance to try something different. You're going to see some different things. We already talked about those things. It's now because you've got this whole veil of the COVID hanging over your head in this short season, and you can try some things. And if you're ever going to change minor league baseball the way it's done, this is the time to do it. And I think it's going to happen. So, it sucks from a lot of standpoints, but I'll give you in a moment as I get to the question here. Yes, could this be a good thing? Could this be a good thing for ABL players will want to play baseball somewhere and opt out coming from development from that's a positive. Yes, and yes, Jared. Yes. Paul, yes. You want to touch on that from your standpoint? Suddenly the next chance to play ball for 75% of minor league players is going to be in Australia.
100%. And I said this, look, I'm not obviously in the inner workings of the ABL, but I mean, they have an opportunity, particularly now, outside of Victoria, one state in Australia is really a mess. The rest of Australia is pretty good. I mean, you have the chance to really, and I know I know initially a few months back, there was sort of conversation around the league may not probably start till January. As of in 2 weeks' time, there's allowed to be up to 60,000 fans at a sporting event here. So that's all gone out the window now, as far as business as usual. But, really, like the ABL, if the ABL was ever going to take a quantum leap, it's this year. This is the time that they could go from no different to the NBL basketball, which really has now positions itself as probably the second league outside the NBA. The ABL could become an absolute, it could very well. I mean, your season could start it could start in September here. Like you could have a September, October, November, December, January season. If you got the buy-in from MLB clubs that were like, yep, look, we need to develop players. And I know there's a lot of players who are probably AA to maybe good prospects at the moment. I think the major league teams are just going to roll the dice and bring them up to the big leagues. But the ABL is the absolute could be the biggest winner in all of this. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's happened. I think the ABL eyes on Asia is possibly. I think they need to change their eyesight pretty quickly into North America. I think because the opportunity is enormous, and it just if done right, DV, and you know it as well as I do it. If done right, I mean that could be an enormous game changer for baseball in this country.
Yeah, Jared, good to see Adam Dodd out there too. Adam, good to see you, mate. Hope you're doing well. I'll give you a couple of little tidbits about this too, Jared. First off, MLB, this new agreement, the new agreement for the minors in Major League Baseball, which will come forth in the offseason, it's calling for AAA, AA, high A, low A. You'll get 4 teams in those full seasons. That's it. Then you'll have a rookie league club in your spring training facility. That'll be a rookie league in the what they call the Gulf Coast League in Florida and the Arizona League in Arizona. Dominican, those academies in Venezuela and Dominican Republic, they'll remain the same. But as far as you'll still have your academies in those countries. But as far as those 4 teams plus your 5th, your rookie team, that's going to be it. And so suddenly there are a lot of guys looking for places to play. And they know this going in. A lot of players have been released already. You've got some guys who I know several players who would not have been released in normal years, were released back in April and May before this whole thing even broke, as far as this MiLB thing. You're going to see a lot of players out there looking for an opportunity to say, hey, you guys are wrong. I can play ball. And I think the ABL is going to be able to jump on it. I can tell you from the American Association standpoint, indie ball, the American Association's playing 6 of the 12 teams are playing this year, beginning this weekend on Friday. They're the only independent league playing a full schedule, not full schedule, a 60-game schedule. I'm sorry, 40-game schedule. But they're playing a short schedule, but they're playing. And the Atlantic League, which is right there as well, they're not playing. The Frontier League and the Can-Am League, which emerged, they're not playing. You got the Pecos League is playing in Houston. You've got a couple of little exhibition-type leagues happening in Texas. But by and large, the only independent league that's playing is the American Association. And the American Association looks at it like this. We're the only thing playing. So Major League Baseball is going to be playing, and so are we. But we're actually going to have fans and giving players opportunities to play. And from a player standpoint, that's a huge thing for the American Association. Suddenly, former big league players who got left with the bubbles, who still want to play and maybe showcase their talents for Japan or for winter ball, they're going to go play the American Association. That same thing works for the Australian Baseball League. The ABL is sitting in a great spot because there's a good chance. Give me a top Australian. I'll give you one. I don't know this for a fact. Let's say we just talked about Ulrich a moment ago. Ulrich Majowski was going to be in high A Lakeland. He was going to be in the Florida State League at high A, knocking on the door of double A. He's not playing this year. Now, I don't know if he's not in the 60-man Tigers 60-man taxi squad, but he's right there on the fringe of being one of those super prospects. His next chance to play may be Australia. I mean, and that's a huge deal. That's huge for the league because you're going to get Ulrich from day one, not Ulrich, middle of the season. You're going to get him from day one because the Tigers want him to play. They want him to play. So it's a long-winded answer, Jared, but I think both of us have covered that. But I think this is a great opportunity. It's like you said before, partner. In 2014, when baseball came, Major League Baseball came to Australia, that was a great opportunity for the ABL and for the league. This is one of those situations making lemonade out of a sour lemon, so to speak.
Absolutely, it's really huge because and also clearly the sites with the KBO is the only thing that really a lot of people are watching. And Japan as well, but Australia's right there, and it could be great, DB. It could be great.
Do you think the taxi squads will play each other? No. What I understand, that's a good question. What I understand with the taxi squads are playing inter-squad games, and what they're going to do. Now I'm going to give you North America. If you've been to North America, if you've been to the States, I'll give you a couple examples. The Kansas City Royals originally were going to play. They're obviously going to play at Kauffman Stadium, beautiful stadium in Kansas City, beautiful ballpark. They were going to play. Their taxi squad was going to play across town at possibly the T-Bone Stadium. They talked about playing at Kansas City T-Bone's ballpark, but they're actually going to play either Omaha, but it looks like now with AAA Omaha is about 2-3 hours up the road. Their AA club is 2 hours down the road down in Northwest Arkansas. So they're going to have the AA club within a drive where the the AA club. The taxi squad will be at their AA affiliate within a day's drive, or less than a day, a morning's drive, close to the doctors, close enough to get to the K if they need to, but also separate because here's the problem. While it sounds like a good idea to have them all in one place, Kauffman Stadium, have your taxi squad and the Royals, what happens if you get an outbreak? If you get an outbreak, suddenly the entire organization's not playing. So they want to keep the taxi squad separate. Let's just say the entire Royals team got it, and they all couldn't play. You move your taxi squad in and they can play. So, I mean, you keep some continuity. For example, I believe the Yankees have plans to play at their Class A club in the New York Penn League. That'll be going away. But and I believe Tampa's going to have – there's a lot of again, Tampa's going to play, I believe, at Clearwater. I'm sorry, not Clearwater. At Port Charlotte, for example. The Dodgers, I believe, and the Angels both are going to use California League ballparks. Texas, here in Dallas-Fort Worth, they're going to use Frisco, their AA park, and so on. So you're going to see them not sharing the same park, and not playing each other inter-squad games, you're going to see them close together, saying get those guys back and forth, and more importantly, close the doctors and the testing there as well. But that question there as well. Sorry, partner, go ahead.
Just quickly on the Texas squads, do you see a realistic chance of, I don't know, say the Rangers, for example, have played 7 games in a row, 8 games in a row. They've got, they like, instead of it playing the getaway game, maybe they send the Texas squad in to play a game.
I can see that. Again, I think this whole thing, and this is the next thing I was going to talk about. This thing is fluid. I think what we showed you a while ago, those graphics of the COVID, the protocols and the roster rules, all these things are fluid. I mean, there's going to be something come up, and I don't know what it may be. It may be how they operate replay because they don't want humans touching the equipment. I don't know. I'm just using that as an example, but something's going to come up that we didn't think about. They're going to have to change the fly. On the fly is this thing. This thing is going to be developing as we go. That's why the schedule's not really officially out, because there's still some things to kind of cross off and cross and make sure that it's going to fall at work for protocol wise. But I can see that. I can very easily see. I'll use the Rangers as you said. Let's say they get a spread. The flu spreads on the clubhouse floor or the clubhouse bus or the charter flight. I mean, all the team have. There have been teams that all got sick on a road trip. I mean, it's not shocking that this could happen where a whole team gets COVID tested and they all can't play, and suddenly your taxi squad has to play. I could see that happening. I think that's why they're there. That's part of the reason they're there, not just for player depth, but I think it's going to happen. I mean, I guess that leaves my big question to you. And I'm going to go and put this grab because it's the big question. I mean, it's the big question. I think that's underlying here. How much faith do you really? I mean, he's kind of said this earlier, but how much faith do we really have that all this can be pulled off without a hitch? I mean, don't you think that this all sounds good in theory, but this ain't the way it's probably going to play out? And do you feel the same way that I feel?
Well, I mean, look, and I agree. And look, again, the AFL here, like now they've had a fiasco tonight. The Richmond team in Melbourne was supposed to go up to Brisbane to play the Eagles, and the outbreak in Melbourne means that Queensland have changed their borders, so they're not allowing Victorians in. So now they've had to change the game. So now my team St Kilda are playing Thursday night, and look, it is, to be honest, it's a mess. The AFL is still a mess, and I honestly don't think legitimately anyone cares if they came out tomorrow and said, look, we gave it a shot. The league shut down for the year. I don't think really anyone will care that dramatically. And I think the same with baseball. I think the one thing with baseball, I think that concerns me the most, and where I cannot see it happening, is, earlier before this call, I sort of pulled up the coronavirus map of the US, and I think, well, I know most people are staying close to home, but still, if you're in Boston, like Toronto, for example, you've still got to navigate that border, and that's one thing. But then you got to go to New York, which seems to be on the improve. Florida seems to be a total mess. So then you're going to take New York teams down to
Texas,
Florida, Boston.
Texas is a mess again.
Texas is a mess as well. I mean, are you going to bring the Angels in? They're going to be comfortable coming to Texas, and I just can't see how it's going to work. I think unless you're literally, I know they travel in a plane, chartered plane by themselves, but what are they going to do? Get in the chartered plane, get in a bus, go straight to the ballpark. Stay in the hotel, And then, look, I mean, Dan, you know it better than I. I mean, and this is, there's a player here in the Australian rules football who's just been breached for COVID. You think these guys are going to go around for 3 months and not one night want to go out in the town? Of course not. And they're going to break. They're only human, and they're going to go out and they're going to get COVID, and it's going to be a mess. And the odds, I would say the odds of this season going flawlessly, in my opinion, about 5%.
Yeah, maybe that. And I can tell you, but by no means I mean this in the wrong way, but traveling with a minor league team for 100 ball games or 50 road games, inevitably something does go haywire. I mean, something always goes haywire. I mean, that's just at the minor league level, and it's going to happen here. I mean, it creates an interesting dilemma. I still think, again, all bets are off. Everything's on the table. And I think this is the 1 year. And I kind of think an advantage for baseball. It's always been so straight laced and so rigid. this is going to take a lot of relaxation on the fans' part, players' part, just to kind of relax. Okay, all of a sudden we go from I'm throwing out a rule. Let's just say all of a sudden they decide, you know what, because of COVID, we can't throw to first base to pick runners off, so you can't steal bases. Let's just say something crazy like that happens.
Yeah.
So be it. We just don't steal bases. All right. I think this year, because of all this, yeah, it'd be terrible. It'd be ridiculous not be able to steal bases. It changes the strategy of the game. But I think all things are off. Yeah. Everything's on the table. That, hey, you know what? This thing's going to be fluid as we go, and I guarantee you, there's more twists in the road down the way here.
I agree, and I really think the way the Major League Baseball should be trying to sell this season, I think the way the fans should be trying to embrace this season is, you know what, we're just gonna. It may be something like the designated hitter hits with an aluminium bat, like who knows? Like it could be something as trivial as that, maybe, or like they do in the 3-point contest of the baseball. Maybe there's a yellow ball. When the pitcher's pitching with the yellow ball, a home run is 3 runs, not 1 run. I mean, it could be anything. Maybe it's, maybe as the game goes on, there's
I saw Trevor Bauer on the news, cable news yesterday, driving to Cincinnati, and he even said, they were joking a little bit. The host is kind of joking about, that rumor that, well, why don't we just throw a home run derby out there to decide who wins the game? Well,
why not?
He didn't poo-poo it. He kind of went, it's not an awful idea, especially if the pitchers had to do it, it'd be more fun. Yeah. And of course, he goes, we might be out there forever, but the point is, all these things are possibilities because in this day, and I think we've all learned this in life. I know I have. In this day and age of life, and what we're going through, it takes a little sense of humor, it takes a little gumption, it takes a little creativity to get us all through every day. And I think that's what baseball has to remember and kind of take off that straitjacket. No doubt about it. But a couple things, too, I didn't get to, but the players are going to be tested every other day, the temperature taken. Actually, every other day. The updated list here I have is every other day are the test. Temperature, they cannot be over 100.4. Also, umpires. Here's one interesting for you, too. The umpires also have a little umpire pool. There's going to be a 3-man crew working each of these spring training sites, and then there'll be a pool of minor league umpires kind of in their own little pod of. Yeah. They'll be actually kind of in their each little pod where these other spring training games are these other pool games are going on. These what do they call them? Expanded rosters are playing, and there'll be that. And then when they go be a 6-man crew when they go to the season. But the umpires, which this is another question. It's going to happen. Umpires going to make a huge mistake, and the hat goes around backwards, and they get what happens then? They do this. You wear a mask. What's going to happen when does the league find the manager that does that?
Yeah, you have to social distance. The umpires are probably, out of all of this, the happiest people of all would have to be the umpires. A, they've got no fans abusing them. B, they've got no managers in their face. I mean, they're probably going to have the greatest season of their life, the umpires, because, I mean, look, all of a sudden, maybe umpiring is going to go through the roof in terms of people umpiring because they got no one to bother them this season.
Here's where I think it's fun, too, and I talked about this a bit on my show with the T-Bones this week and last week. Had Rob Paneer with This Week in the American Association. He and I were talking about, I was comparing the season short, how it's going to be much more like watching an ABL game. The Australian Baseball League, and you and I have talked about this, you usually have an ace and the teams that win have a 1 and 2 starter, and then it can somehow find a way on game 3 and 4 with a deep bullpen to get you through it. I mean, maybe a guy goes 3 innings, another guy goes 3. Those deep bullpens and those 1 and 2 starters are going to be key. And I think it's going to be much more like an Australian Baseball League season because everybody's going to have an ace. The difference in the ABL to me is always not so much the aces. They always cancel each other out. It's always a toss-up. It's that 3rd and 4th game. That's why Daniel Schmidt was always so valuable to the Perth Heat because he was always lethal on that 4th day. No one was usually facing him that was close to him than what Daniel Schmidt could do. It's going to be a lot like watching ABL baseball this sprint, this whole how you manage rosters and how you manage your bench. And the deep bullpen is going to be huge for teams.
100%, and I think like it's even one of the new rules which was coming in regardless. The pitchers having to face three batters. I mean, is that going to change the strategy a little bit? I mean, I love that rule personally because there's nothing worse, and you know it more than anyone, DV. There's nothing worse when a game's dragging than you add in a few pitching changes just to really rub salt in the wound. But
let's go to a break again.
Let's go to another break.
Now this from from sponsor B, or from Fielder's Choice. The Christmas specials here.
Exactly, the batting special. I think we've told you 100 times, folks, but the bat sale's back on again. And look, I think it'll be such a look. I actually think if you embrace it, this MLB season, if you really take it on face value for what it's worth, and maybe I don't know, maybe they're better off not playing the World Series this year. Maybe they're better off playing it as the Jackie Robinson Cup or something like that. Maybe it's better to do it because whoever wins it's probably going to have the asterisk next to it. Maybe it's just something radical again. But I think they can have a lot of fun with it. And it's just, but you're going to get your people going, well, this isn't baseball, blah, blah, blah. But,
I asked myself this question too, as a Ranger fan who had his heart broken in 2012 or one out away twice from the World Series. I'm not going to, if the Rangers were to somehow win a World Series this year, asterisk it all you want to. It's kind of like I sound like an Astros fan now, but asterisk the Astros, asterisk the Rangers, because I mean it's been such long suffering. I don't know if that means anything more in the long grand scheme of things. Yeah, it'll be an asterisk, but I can't. I just can't. Like I said in Seattle earlier, I just don't think fans are going to. If their team has a chance to win in November, I think everybody's on board. I think. I mean, am I crazy here? But
no,
I think.
Look, I think. Look, once you get to the postseason, I think like at the end of the day, it's not. And historically, in the last even 10 years, last decade, it hasn't necessarily been the best team coming to the postseasons won the World Series. I mean, like I probably wouldn't have thought the Nationals were they were great, but I didn't really think that when the postseason started, they wouldn't have been my pick. So I think you still got to win a lot of ball games in that postseason. I mean, it's not an easy, and then again, the rules change slightly in the postseason as well. So like the international tie, or the runner on second base goes away in the postseason and things like that. Yep. So, look, I think if you win, you'd be ecstatic. I mean, you may not be able to celebrate like you would. It'd be kind of a disappointment that you probably wouldn't be able to do the ticket tape parade. You wouldn't be able to do the parade in town. You wouldn't have the people around the buses and things like that. So part of it would be a bit meh. But look, you get to wear that ring, DV, and you get to say world champions.
You got to say world champion. Jared says he'd take it. So see, I'm with you. I'm right there with you on that. I think that. I mean, I think now I'm kind of like eh. But see, the back of my mind, the cynical me says, well, it'd be the one time the Rangers win would be the year it's shortened season. But I think you're going to see too. One little tidbit I'll throw out here too, or not tidbit. One more little thought before we move on to wrap this thing up is, managers are going to be important. How a manager, I think the strength of him. He goes really. Greg Taggart's the manager of the Gary South Shirell Cats, and I worked with them for 5 years. And Greg always told me, Dan, the manager makes the lineup card opening day. But the players make the lineup card from then on. I mean, if you're hitting well and you're in the rotation or whatever it is, if you're hitting in a 4-hole and you're producing, you're going to make that card up yourself without him. He just writes the names in there. The players make that. But I think now with the short season, when to go to the bullpen, what gambles to make. We've seen it in the ABL where we've had. I remember 3 years ago. Remember when Matt Kennelly started a game as a starting pitcher and got a win, which turned out to be a pretty big game in the pecking order of a playoff run for the Heat when they wound up playing Canberra, lost at home in the first round. But it was a series win because they threw it kind of outside the box, threw MK out there and got a win. It was that kind of gamble right there. Those kind of outside the box, those creative managers are going to be huge. I think the Maddens of the world are going to be the kind of guys that can flourish here.
I think so, and that's where I sort of circle, and I guess to wrap it up, we'll sort of look at which teams are. the LA Angels could be a really interesting team this year. I mean, we know they've got a pretty good team as it is, but Matt, you're right, DB. And add on top of that, there's no media scrums anymore at the end of the game. The media aren't allowed in the locker room. So in many ways, the manager is probably far more pivotal than ever, because like the routine of leaving the game, going to the locker room, having the media harass you for quotes and sound bites. I mean, they're not in the locker room, so the manager's in the like so much more controllability around it. There's not going to be as much noise as normal for the clubs, but yeah, it's going to take. I'm with you. It's going to take a really, I think the old school manager is going to be in trouble. The crafty, creative managers are the ones that I'd be putting my money on.
No doubt about it. A couple items, too, just to kind of scattershoot here as we kind of get this thing kind of wrapped up a bit, is we'll get the ABL in just a second, but Korea has been going there. I think they're in week 9 now.
Yep.
I won't go the ladder necessarily about that, because you guys can probably go check that out yourself. But having a pretty good year, despite his team being terrible, is Warwick Saupold. Warwick is he is the bright spot on a team that's not playing too well, those Hanwha Eagles. But also notice that the Korea is going to add fans, which we've talked about that in our talking on our Kansas City show you were with me on. They're going to have fans, which means cheering and other things. How are those Koreans going to keep from cheering, Paul?
Well, that I think from what I read, I remember like the COVID's pretty much under control in South Korea, so they're at they're at really good levels as well. But his Hanwha Eagles 12-37 on the season, not going very well. But I think of those 12 wins, has got maybe 5 of those, so he's pitched well. The KBO, I think it's losing its speed a little bit. I mean, everyone was up and about because it was the only thing on TV for a while, but it's losing a bit. But just quickly, the NC Dinos leading the way in the KBO, 33-15, and poor old Hanwha on the bottom of the standings, 12-37. So
Doosan, LG, those are the top 3, I believe, as I checked that this morning. AL West is going to be most interesting division in baseball. It's loaded with you both, because again, the AL West is going to be AL NL West. You're going to have a different playoff format. They're going to be playing the Dodgers and the NL West teams. They play the AL West teams. It's a lot of late night baseball for us in the Central Time Zone, but I've always liked that. But yes, no doubt about it. Yeah, we can talk more about that next week. But yeah, no doubt about it. Japan started last week, and I guess it's a 2-part question. Warwick having such a good run right now in the KBO, either at worst he's going to be back in the KBO. That's the worst thing. He'll be back there. But Major League, Japan, he suddenly found himself at the top of the list of guys from that league that can be parlaying that to something else. I mean, I'm not having talked to him, and we need to get him on at some point.
Yeah.
But I would think that he's not the kind of guy that looks forward and tries to count his chickens for they hatch. He was never that way as a minor leaguer. He was always very focused on AA and single A. But he's positioned himself for a pretty good spot, not just with Team Australia, but internationally, either in Japan or back in the big leagues.
Well, that's right. And look, he's on a pretty good – I think he's one of the highest paid players in the KBO. He's on a good wage. Look, I tend to think that – the beauty about South Korea is he's on the exact same time zone as Perth. So, he's got his fiance here, his family here. Probably life's maybe a little bit easier on the same time zone. I think he's found his little niche there as well. I'd expect him probably to stay in Asia, but it's hard to say. But it could be, and that's another thing about this whole league. I mean, you would assume that a lot of Major League Baseball teams are going to play their young talent this year, and maybe a lot of those slightly older guys. You might see a flood of Americans playing in Korea and Japan next year as well. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, MPB underway, which you don't hear too much about because I don't know if in the States you've got the MPB on the ESPN over there, but
it's a little hard to follow. But you have such a large of the two. Well, really, Korea and Japan both. Now, in normal years, you'd get a little more coverage in following it. But since the travel ban is kind of poo-pooed that as well, I keep saying poo-pooed. I don't know why that's. I guess it's better than saying the S word. But yeah, it's the third time I used the word poo-poo, and I said it since I was 2. But anyway, I digress. But I think there's a little more following of the Nippon in general, just because, just historically, a lot more Americans have played over there of recognition, and a lot more Japanese have played over here of recognition as well. I think really that a lot of that came about when with Ichiro Suzuki, and then of course Yu Darvish. But with Ichiro coming over when he did, that really kind of changed the interest and got more interest in the Japanese league. But just in general, I think you got to be happy with the KBO. Suddenly people know about it, and I think people know more about Japan, and the league in Taiwan has been going as well. And those leagues all took advantage, especially the Korean and the Taiwan CPBL. They took advantage, like we were talking about, the ABL needing to do that in the American Association, and everybody, they took advantage of the opportunity and made a splash while they could.
100%. I can't add it any better, DV.
Let's quite a quote. I want to give you guys a couple of things. First off, questions and comments. We're going to close this thing out here. But if you got anything to ask away, I do want to give you guys a little ABL. As far as ABL stuff, might as well throw this out there and not throw it out there. I guess it's not really thrown out there, but there are some ABL connections. First off, I believe there's 29 players that have ABL experience in some form or fashion that are all currently in the bubbles, the taxi bubbles with spring training bubble, whatever you want to call it, whatever word you want to use. There's 29 ABL connections who are currently playing with a bubble, meaning they're with the Yankees bubble or whoever, the Rangers, whoever. Broken down by team, I got Auckland's got 1, Adelaide 4, Melbourne 4, Perth 5, Canberra 7, Sydney 3, Geelong Korea 1, and Brizzy has 4, but 29 players in big league camp, I guess, camp 2.0. Anybody we should be watching? Obviously, Liam Hendriks is the guy I think of first and foremost. I think of Liam because Liam's not only a 40-man guy, he's an all-star and set to probably have a pretty good go, I would think. Outside of Liam, Lewis Thorpe would be the other I would think of. Anybody else out there you're looking forward to thinking has got a chance to play some?
Well, I think if you're a Seattle fan, I think the one guy, the tiebreaker rules, really plays beautifully in the hands of Jake Fraley. I mean, he would be the guy that you would 100% of the time put on second base. So, look, I'd expect Fraley to get. I think he'll be quite handy for Seattle this year. I really, really like what he's got to do. Of course, I know he didn't play full season. Ronald Acuna at Atlanta will be another interesting one to watch from an Australian perspective. Liam Hendriks, I think, is going to be great. Lewis Thorpe, I'm with you as well, DV. We saw Lewis Thorpe when he was 16, and we both sat there and said, "Boy, this kid's going to be a star." He's right for picking. And I love the Minnesota Twins as well. I think if I was to suggest, if I was to take my pick of who win the World Series, I would pick the Minnesota Twins right now. So I think Lewis and the Twins are in for a good year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, and that's the one thing. I think the thing that to me, and I'll kind of close with that thought. That's great. We have a lot of, and you have a lot of guys getting a chance that are ABL alums, but you're not getting what the ultimate goal is to get more Australians in affiliated baseball, more Australians in collegiate baseball, more Australians in junior college baseball, more Australians in independent ball. And I will not name, but I had a couple of contacts this week with players that are Australian who I talked to this week, and I won't name the names, but who were told, hey, if you can find a place to play, do it, because you're not going to play this year in the MiLB, and if you can play indie ball, do it. But there's a lot of guys who need reps, aren't getting them. That's the one, to me, that's the big drawback. It's great that 29 players are in those big league camps, but I feel for the guys. I mentioned Ulrich again, and a guy like Robbie Glendenning, that's a guy that's a member of Team Australia. Those are guys that you want to see get reps, not just for their career, but for Team Australia, for the ABL, for them as a chance to climb the ladder. I mean, Robbie was on a door of AAA. I mean, you have some guys that are going to miss those opportunities, and I hate that. I mean, there was some guys Jake Baker got released. I don't think he would have been released. It wasn't for the fact with the Tigers, young man from Perth. Jake was released. I doubt he would have been released if it wasn't for the fact that the Tigers had a gluttony of players. And he just, and he's not alone. So for me, while yes, it's great the ABL has those connections, the Australians are what I'm worried about, and I want them to get opportunities. And that's one of the things you're not going to see this summer.
No, and Jess Williams in the same boat who got released from the Milwaukee Brewers. And look, I think unfortunately from an Australian perspective, I think as well, and we talked earlier about MiLB and the ease of Corona to be. I think unfortunately for Australian players, they also become easy to release because it's from a team's perspective, they kind of can soften the blow by like really doing the whole like Corona, best for you to stay home. Like they're really. I think you have to be, you can't be good anymore. You have to be elite if you're an Australian. And look, with the shrinking of minor league baseball, I think, it's going to become tougher and tougher. But that's where I guess, and this whole opens up a whole separate debate we'll go through on a different show. What's the best tact for Australia right now? Is it cozying up to Korea, Japan? Is it building Asia and Australasia baseball, or is it do we go the North America market? And I think baseball in Australia in general is at a crossroads where they need to make a decision who they're hitching their wagon.
Yeah, and I'll kind of just tease that for our future broadcast. Going back to that MiLB situation, the contracted teams. Those teams may not go away. I mean, they may go away from affiliatable. They may not be an Astros affiliate in Quad Cities, for example, in the Midwest League. That may be an independent league team or the Dream League, which is one of the proposals been put out for non-drafted players. But they may also become part of the independent leagues, and those are growing. Independent leagues independent league expansion. The American Association is coming. And those leagues are going to grow, the Atlantic and the American Association. Suddenly, these other cities are going to have ballparks. There's going to be chances for players to play independent ball as well. So maybe that's an angle as well. And I'll give you one more thought about that too. That's a show we will have. I'll use Robbie Glendinning as an example. He went to play college ball at JUCO ranks in Missouri. Because of that, he is in a lot different category player-wise than a Jess Williams. Not that what I mean by that, they're great ball players. What I mean by that, draft-wise, Robbie was drafted. Jess Williams was a free agent, international free agent. Totally different investments, totally different situation, and a little bit different visa too, to a degree. Not always, but that's also part of it too. And I think that goes into it because you can be drafted as an Australian playing collegiate baseball in the States. A lot of people don't realize that, but anyway, that's a little side view as well. But that's something we can talk about down the road. Coming up down the road, I guess my question to you is, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do down the road? Coming up next when we're back.
Well, we'll keep the weekly show going, DV. It's always good to keep it going and. Look, we'll get a lot more guests on. We'll sort of, we'll plan what is the future for Australian baseball. I think ultimately that's kind of where the core is, and it'll be nice in a couple of weeks. Boy, I was thinking the other day, it'd be nice in a couple of weeks to have the radio on with the baseball in the background, or the TV on with the baseball in the background, and plenty of things going on behind the scenes as well, which we'll sort of we'll get to as well. But look, it's going to be a we're all in on this project, and we're all in on baseball. So we have to. It'll be a ride, DV.
That's right.
Long ride so far, but
it'll be a ride. It's a ride for sure. Well, we'll be covering this MiLB and MLB and all this other stuff from a Australian perspective and also an ABL perspective, and just keeping you guys informed on some of the ins and outs. And I hope you'll join us here on Talking Baseball Australia. Final words, mate, as we shut it down.
Now, just let's get some runs, DV.
Let's get some runs. Let's get some runs for sure. By the way, if you guys are really bored tomorrow, you can go to my personal. Go to the Kansas City T-Bones MixLR page. I'm going to preview this real quick for you guys. Let me pull it up. I'll bring Paul back just a moment. There you go. T-Bones Greatest Hits from the Vault tomorrow in the States. It'll be a Thursday in the States. It'll be evening for you guys in Australia. But at noontime, it'll be a little chat going back to looking at one of the great T-Bones games in recent history, and we'll do that on the MixLR. It's the same, go to Talking Baseball Australia and just, and I think actually just go to our MixLR channel. You can also just go to MixLR and just type in Kansas City T-Bones. It'll come up and you'll get the T-Bones greatest hits from the vault right there. And of course, all the coverage. You can follow us and you'll see our graphic in a moment to close at our Twitter spots. Paul Morgs and Dan Vaughn, we're both on there. And we follow us on Twitter. And of course, follow us on Talking Baseball Australia, both on Facebook and on the Twitter side. We got a website coming too. We got broadcasts coming at the Let Me in the Country. Knock on wood. I mean, if not, I'll be spending 14 days in a tent.
I did hear, which could be positive news, that from the government that foreign in other sports, there's a visa class coming out for other sports that for athletes coming into. Because, of course, a lot of this is around the 2023 Women's World Cup. So I think you might end up seeing a lot more players than you think in the ABL this year. I think there might be a lot more international players than you think.
Let's hope so. Hey, pal, good to see you. Have a great rest of your day. You guys, thanks for joining us here. You're watching on replay. Again, make sure you bookmark us, find us, subscribe to us on Facebook, and again, as I mentioned, Twitter, and both our Twitters and as well on the Talking Baseball Australia site. Tough times we live in right now. It's a crazy world. Hug somebody, love somebody, show the love, and let's all try to get better and come out of this thing better when we meet again next week at this same time right here on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Partner, I'll see you next week, mate.
Will do. Be good, DV.
We'll see you guys, and let's close. We're actually so high-tech here. We're so high-tech, we actually have a video close, so let's roll the close. Here we go, folks. Talking Baseball Australia. See you next week.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root.